Chapter 25. Who's Daddy? Sugar Daddy. Jerry Geisler was soon to receive another call. A 54-year-old millionaire in trouble with a girl. His name was Charles Spencer Chaplin. The opening scene of what was to become a long drawn-out courtroom drama took place under the auspices of another millionaire, J. Paul Getty. It all began when Miss Plain Joan Barry arrived in Hollywood in 1940, expecting to crash the movies. Her name did not make the headlines in 1943 and 44, not for any on-screen ability, but because she was still expecting, and had named Charles Chaplin as the father. She had floated around town taking odd jobs, often as a waitress. One day she was invited to join a party of girls who were going down to Mexico for the inauguration of oil man Getty's Avila Camacho. There she met Tim Durant, an agent for United Artists, who introduced her to Chaplin, then looking for a female lead for Shadow and Substance, a film he was planning. Chaplin told the press he had discovered a new Maude Adams, and he signed Barry up for a $75 a week contract. That was a lot of money back then, trust me. While being groomed for the role, the budding star underwent 2 abortions. By the following year, in October 1942, Chaplin's dissatisfaction with her, both personal and professional, seemed complete. Her salary was reduced to a mere $25. The girl turned up at his house at Christmas, brandishing a gun that she had bought at a pawn shop. The master actor and director found these histrionics an erotic turn-on. He dispensed with the pistol and bawled his deranged, estranged protege on a bearskin rug in front of a glowing fireplace. When she turned up again to make a scene a few days later, the great dictator called the police, who ordered her to leave town. A few months later, she was discovered climbing into a window at Chaplin's house and given 30 days in jail. Then the storm broke, thanks to the power of one of Chaplin's most bitter enemies. Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, 2 battle-axe columnists, were as famous in their heyday as Gorgeous Garbo or Marlene and the other stars whose lives they wrote about. They were, however, much more powerful and had set themselves up as the arbiters of the film colony's moral life. Through their syndicated columns, they reached 75 million readers and exerted an influence difficult to imagine today in a more liberated society, which no longer considers the revelation that a married star has been set out with a young chorus girl as news on par with the explosions of the first atom bomb. Hedda, in particular, had for many years treated Chaplin as an enemy of society. Her patriotic hackles up, she denounced him for having arrived a poor unknown in the United States, making a fortune here, and then never becoming an American citizen. One morning, while Hedda was relieving herself of the day's tittle-tattle to her secretary, a hysterical redhead barged in and blurted out that she was bearing Charlie Chaplin's illegitimate child and had been thrown out by him. This was the biggest grist that had ever hit Hedda's mill. Jones said that she had come to her because she had read one of her columns in which Hedda had warned of the fate awaiting any girl foolish enough to accept a position as a Chaplin protege. Hedda's next column spewed forth the news as a warning to other film folk involved in dubious relationships. Plain Jones' pregnancy rapidly stirred up a bitchy media tug-of-war. Charlie postponed his marriage to Una O'Neill because of Hedda's story. As revenge on Hedda, when he later married Una, he gave the scoop to Lolly in order to rub salt in Hedda's acid tongue. Hardly a day went by without a blast from Hopper at Charlie. She let fly rumors that Chaplin had insulted the press at his wedding, calling them morons, which was untrue, and that the film Shadow and Substance would be canceled, that the forthcoming paternity trial would be the biggest Hollywood circus in years. When the suit was filed, Chaplin denied that he had fathered the child but agreed to submit to a blood test. He paid all of Barry's medical expenses, gave her $2,500 and $100 as a week as settlement. Chaplin was then indicted by a federal grand jury on 4 counts. The FBI entered the case. Chaplin was photographed being fingerprinted. Barry's daughter was born on October 2, 1943. The decision was a model of perplexity. Although blood tests proved that Chaplin was not the girl's father, the jury, despite all of Geisler's efforts, decided against him and ordered him to support the child. It is interesting to note that while Luella published the results of the blood test, Hedda was on the spot covering the trial, but made no mention of them. More fodder was furnished Chaplin's right-wing enemies when, during the trial, a Chaplin festival was launched in Moscow. The Russians opened the festival by blaming Chaplin's recent troubles on the Trotskyites. They were to blame, and with them the mudslingers of the Hearst and McCormick tabloid press. This was a unique event, the only time in recorded history when the Kremlin had stuck its 2 kopecks into a Hollywood sex scandal. Hedda continued needing Chaplin for the rest of her life, but towards the end of her career, her opinions, and those of her rival sister in twaddle, Lolly Parsons, were fortunately no longer received by a more sophisticated American public as engraved footnotes to the Ten Commandments. Genius is often an infinite capacity for survival. Chaplin survived his trials and other tribulations, and went on to make 4 films, one of which, Monsieur Verdoux, although financially a disaster, it was banned in many places in the United States, incorporated a great deal of his bitterness. The result was a masterpiece, one of the finest films ever made. It will be seen and admired long after the Heddas and Llewellas are forgotten. That is the end of this chapter.